What is going on, everybody? This is Jimmy, and this is episode 199 on October 1st of the Horrific Podcast. Excited to be here for you guys. Excited to have a Horrific Podcast up for you. It has just been busy. It has been a busy time working on the documentary Haunted by Higby, working on haunt season this October, and this weekend that we just passed was actually the first amount of haunt season events that we'll be bringing you all month. The first, probably this week, tomorrow or Thursday, we will have a slew of haunt season coverage. So I attended a swinging wake presented by Haunted Orange County, California. This was awesome, man. This had the Imagineers who helped design, create, build the Haunted Mansion from Disneyland. Bob Gurr was there. He's a legendary Imagineer. Garner Holt was there. He's the guy who did the Nightmare Before Christmas overlay to the Haunted Mansion that happens every year. Kat Cressida, the Black Widow Bride, was there. Justin Scard, YouTube celebrity, was there. A bunch of people were there. Got to mingle with all of them. They did a cool presentation. They did a cool skit as well. We will have all of that for you guys this coming episode. We also did Disneyland's Halloween just normal event, so a lot of coverage there for you guys. We also did the Oogie Boogie Bash, the first Oogie Boogie Bash from California Adventure. We will have that coming to you guys as well. And then Higby Promotions or Productions, they did a trip to Los Angeles Haunted Hayride. So we will have that. So there's 4 episodes already for this year's haunt season coming from the first weekend here really soon. Now this weekend coming up, we will be at the Higby's Scared to Be Aware event. We will then be at Beyond the Gates in Merced, and we will have a special Force Friday with Kane and myself sticking it out one last time for Triple Force Friday. So 3 more haunt season episodes, one of them being a little bit of a spinoff Goofy Nerd one, but whatever. Yeah, so already a ton of content this week for you haunt season wise, but I wanted to get another Horrific podcast out there for you as we are at 199. News wise, not a lot of news. I can tell you that 3 from Hell, Rob Zombie's 3 from Hell, will have one more night in the theater, October 14th, a Monday. We will be meeting for that for a haunt season episode, so they're bringing it back one night only. That is very rad. We will also have a episode movie-wise this week or this month with Halloween on October 31st. That'll be fun. We also this week we'll be doing the Joker screening, so I don't know if we will be podcasting so much as that. That is the night before, going into Force Friday as well. So you can combine the two. Maybe we'll see. Yeah, man. It's busy. It's a whirlwind right now, but it has been a fun ride thus far. So today's guest or today's featured content is John Kassir from Sinister Creature Con. John Kassir's Sinister Creature Con, a total fun guy. Have loved talking to him so much, again and again. Great guy. A lot of fun. A lot of good times talking with him. And he always puts on an entertaining show. It's like a one-man show when John does a panel, and you'll see that here relatively soon. When he gets rolling, he gets rolling. He loves to entertain. His story, really showcases that aspect of it. That Star Search, voice actor. He's done it all, man. And he, I think, will be very entertaining for you guys to check out. So, as I'm slugging down coffee after coffee, trying to catch up from vacation, trying to get everything, organized from this past weekend. Enjoy John Kassir and
all right, everybody. You know him. You love him. He was the Crypt Keeper. Please welcome John Kassir.
Thank you for wearing almost nothing. I had to get that on video. You guys are too awesome. This has been an awesome convention, and I want to thank you guys all for coming out. My God, you guys look like adults. It's weird, man. It's amazing. It's truly amazing that we started out with all our horror obsessions as kids, and just right off the bat, I want to say that, I'll stand so people can see in the back pretty well. But I just want to say that, maybe I'll even, can we get more wire here?
Oh.
Thank you. Or is it short?
I see that.
Short. This happened to me on a date once. Maybe we can come around in front of the table. Oh, thank you.
There you go.
Awesome.
I got you.
Yeah, I think how's that work? Is that okay for you? Is that okay for you?
It's great for me.
Abby, I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. I get it all the
It's been
time.
busy. Trying to remember so many names of people that come out. Sabra. That was the easier one to remember. It's like, oh, my name's Bill. My name's Bob. How do you spell that? B-A-W-B. No way. The guy goes, Bob. I go, how do you spell that? B-O-B. I go, you'd be surprised. Some people do not spell it B-O-B. But I just want to say that we never thought that kids were watching Tales from the Crypt. When it was on the air in the original version, which is why they made the cartoon. And I kept saying, you gotta make a live action version for kids. And they're like, nah, too scary. I was like, Goosebumps is doing it. Hello. It's a fucking puppet. Kids are watching it, I guarantee you, because I collected the comic books as a kid. We're talking, I'm old enough for it to be pre-code comic books, we're talking about here. And which, as some of you know, the reason they put codes on comic books was because of comic books like Tales from the Crypt and EC Comics, because they they thought they caused juvenile delinquency. I guess they were kind of right. I don't know. But I used to have to hide mine in my Casper comics because my mom would take them away from me, because they had such bad press. And after I got the part, as an actor who had been acting for years and really didn't even have a voiceover career yet, I had done everything from off-Broadway to sitcoms. I had my first series on HBO called First and 10, which some people remember, all you young guys who were watching it because it was football and titties. got to watch it. So he's raising his hand. He's like, yes, that's fine. I was like, I couldn't believe they were turning it into a show because I'd grown up on these comic books, and I called up my mom. I go, where are my comic books? They're gonna be worth a fortune. She's like, oh, I gave them to some kid down the street with your Matchbox cars and your Hot Wheels, and I was like, oh, my collectible shit. Just gave it all away. Those things would be worth a fortune, but not really a fortune, but a lot of money for a comic book. But I certainly am appreciative of the fact that that Tales from the Crypt, something that I loved as a kid, has become such an amazing thing that two generations, a generation before you, two generations before you grew up with as a comic book and as a property, and then another two generations have grown up with as a television show and movies, which I just think is incredible. It's an incredible honor to Bill Gaines and his family and EC Comics for creating it. And I think one of the successes of Tales from the Crypt, the show and the movies, was that they went out of their way to make them like the comic book as much as possible. They even used some of the frames of the comic book to use them as storyboards when they were shooting a shot. It'd be like there's a guy walking in the foreground holding a head, and there's a body running away with no head, and that's how they would frame it, just like in the comic book, which was kind of cool. So thank you, and I think you probably all know that Tales from the Crypt influenced so much of horror for that reason, because of the great artists that they hired for the comic book. And if you have the DVD box set or the first season of episodes, there's a great behind the screens DVD that talks about the history of Tales from the Crypt, from comic book to movies, and that movie in the 70s with Sir Ralph Richardson playing the Crypt Keeper, and into television, and then back into movies, and Christmas albums and rock albums and everything else. A game show. I always wish that they had done a talk show in the Crypt Keeper. Where was the audience?
Yes. So, tell me, what scares you, Chuck Bradley? You got a little something right there.
But it just writes itself, right? But they really got a lot out of the Crypt Keeper over the years, and. But I just really, because I'm glad it's something that I love, that I'm here to meet you guys and to spend time with you guys, because I love horror. The Universal horror monster movies were my favorite as a kid, and they didn't have DVDs and VCRs and all that stuff, so you had to look through the TV guide and see if it was coming on Twilight movie at 4:30 on Saturday or whatever, and watching Outer Limits and Twilight Zone. They play them every Saturday afternoon. And I would watch those and that kind of thing. So it's kind of fun that I'm sure there are people that you meet here, and then you come up to them and go, oh my God, you were so good in that movie where you got hacked up into pieces and stuff like that. And little do you know that they probably hated doing it. They worked with people they didn't like, and they can't believe that they have to come sign autographs to some of the people, something that they hated. But let me tell you, above and beyond that, they're appreciative of you being there for them, and they're here for you for that reason. Because without an audience, and I like being an audience as much as I like being a performer, without an audience, it doesn't all work. So thank you for that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
But you kind of answered everything basically. I know, you were awesome. No, but you really did. You were the start of my horror. I'm not you, but the Crypt Keeper. So you.
Unless you spelled it differently.
But
You'll get that later.
A lot of us, Mom said no, but I stayed up and watched it, and it was amazing. How did you, you said you love the comics and everything. How did you get the role?
Getting the role was maybe one of the easiest roles I ever got. It just came out of the blue to me. I started out as a theater actor. I got my degree in theater in college. I mean, I did theater as a kid. I loved it. I loved performing in front of an audience. I used to do fake, circuses in my basement for the other kids in the neighborhood. And, like the movies make all their, money on selling popcorn and candy. I charge them a penny to get into the circus, and then I buy penny candy and sell it for a nickel. It was my own little, Ringling Brothers guy going on. But I pretend I was on a tightrope or on a, I pretend like I was on a, unicycle and stuff like that, and I'd do a puppet show behind a sheet and stuff like that. And the kids in my neighborhood loved it. And so I continued all through high school and decided I wanted to be an actor. And I thought I'd be a theater actor because I love performing live. And got my degree in theater and moved to New York to do my first off-Broadway show, which closed in 3 weeks, and found myself making a living street performing in front of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And which I probably made more money doing that than I ever made in the theater because it pays so little. Because it's just like an audience, depending on the size of the theater, twice the size of this room or whatever. Off Broadway goes up to 499 seats, and Broadway's more, but they can only pay you so much because they're only making so much money on filling those many seats, as opposed to television and everything else. So I never really was making much of a living. So I started doing a bunch of comedy and that kind of thing. And I got in an off-Broadway show called Three Guys Naked from the Waist Down. And I know it sounds rude, but it was about stand-up comics. And that's kind of a metaphor how a stand-up comic feels when he's standing in front of an audience and he's bombing. It feels like your pants are around your ankles and you're, like you're totally naked. And not that I haven't done that, but just for laughs. But it starred myself along with Scott Bakula and a guy named Jerry Colker who wrote the piece. And think Dreamgirls, but with stand-up comics. It was a musical, big hit, and hey, nobody walks out on me. You gotta be somewhere? Am I boring you? No, I'm kidding. Come on.
Sneaky, sneaky.
Nobody else is getting up even to go to the bathroom. 2 hours later. Anyway, so we played these 3 stand-up comics who hit it like alone are not very good, but together they become a hit. And then in the second act, we play all the agents and the press and the photographers and all these different characters. And it was a big hit off Broadway. And that was the first year they had a show called Star Search. And if any of you are old enough to remember, it was like before American Idol, before The Voice. They had categories that I don't know why they had these categories. It went supermodel, actor, singer, band, dancers, all these different categories. And at first they approached me when I was doing the play and they said, "Hey, we want you to be on Star Search." I go, "What is a singer?" I'm in this musical, I can sing, but I'm no Sam Harris, who is, if you know Sam Harris, is a really amazing singer, was winning week after week on the show. And they go, "No, we want you to come on as a stand-up comic." And I go, "I'm not really a stand-up comic, right? It's a part of playing in the show." They go, "Well, you can win $100,000. I'm like, "Fuck, have you seen my act?" I'm working on it tomorrow. So I went on the show, and having done sketch comedy and street performing, it wasn't like it was foreign to me, but I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I didn't really have jokes, so I started doing characters and voices. Like I do the Wizard of Oz in 2.5 minutes,
As coroner, I must concur, I thoroughly examined her. We represent the lollipop you, the lollipop you, the lollipop you.
witch. Oh, Dorothy's in that awful place. Oh, I hate to think of her in there. Fellas, we've got to get her out. I got a plan how to get in there, and you're gonna lead us.
All right, I'll go in there for Dorothy. Wicked witch or no wicked witch. Gods or no gods, there's just one thing I want you fellas to do.
What's that?
Talk me out of it.
Anyway. But, that's the kind of stuff that I was coming up with every week, and I kept winning. And I was like, oh crap, I got to come up with another 2.5 minutes, And I got into the semifinals, and they put me up against this young comic who was doing really well, Rosie O'Donnell, and I beat her. And then in the finals, I went up against Sinbad, and I beat her. And all of a sudden, they're like, you won $100,000, and you're going to open for Tom Jones in Vegas. And I was like, everybody's like, oh, way to go, man, way to go. I'm like, how am I going to open for Tom Jones in Vegas? I have no fucking act. I just started this, So I got my ass in the clubs, and I started with the bits that I had done on the show, and I put together this whole routine based on a guy who was addicted to television, and I could change channels on myself, and I had to start with about 15, 20 minutes as an opening act. And I wound up opening for the Temptations and the Four Tops on their TNT tour, and I opened for Lou Rawls and Bobby Vinton and Rodney Dangerfield and Richard Belzer and all these different acts. And and then I started growing my act. And so I was introduced to Hollywood as a stand-up comedian, not as an actor. So it was kind of a double-edged sword, because I was like, well, how do I make a living now when I'm an actor? And I'm expected to be a stand-up. And, this is the period where Jerry Seinfeld was just becoming popular, and Bill Maher is just getting into his own. And, Jay Leno was well established, but he was still not on the Tonight Show yet. And, Sam Kinison was big, and Bobcat Goldthwait and all these guys. And I was like, I'm not as good as these guys. I haven't been doing it as long. I don't have the material. I could go up and make an audience go nuts for, my 20 minutes to an hour, whatever they gave me to do. But as far as making a whole career out of it, I was like, boy, I better start reestablishing myself as an actor. But, and the first job that I got was this series version 10. And so HBO called my agents, and they said, well, we need somebody who can be a comic, who can do voices, and is a good actor. And we want you to go down to Kevin Yeager's studio. And if you know who Kevin Yeager is, he made Chucky. He designed the look for Freddy Krueger. I mean, he's one of the best artists, creature maker, special effects, special effects artists that we know. And he was in the process of making the first Crypt Keeper puppet. And so they sent me down to his studio, and he had a little boom box with a little microphone like this. Here, hold this, John, and record this for me, and on a little cassette tape. And I could see all these other voice actors, and I think I remembered Michael Winslow and some other people auditioning, Charlie Flesher, who had already worked for some of the producers doing Roger Rabbit and that kind of thing. And I started thinking, okay, let's give him a laugh like the Wicked Witch of the West. I know how to do that. I want him to be funny and sly, like Alfred Hitchcock when he'd introduce his show. And, because I knew the comic book, I knew the puns were really speaking Shakespeare, and these people were sitting there looking at the stuff going, be careful what you ask for, you may get it. This is shit, you don't understand. This guy loves saying this shit, So I went in, and I could see the puppet had holes in his throat, and I gave him the texture and the rotten teeth, and I started doing for Kevin Yeager, and he was like this. And so he started laughing, I started laughing. I go, okay, the guy laughs at his own jokes. That's great. I'm doing it for him. And then the very next day, he had me doing it for Joel Silver and Dick Donner, the two of the biggest movie producers in the industry at the time, and still big, and in their office. And they're like, great, we'll see you on the set. And it's like, wow, that was too easy. Not even something I was looking for. And honestly, I'm grateful for that job, not only because I loved Tales from the Crypt as a kid and it turned into such a great show, but because it launched a voiceover career for me that I didn't have. And I know that voiceover doesn't necessarily use every skill that I studied as a theater actor and a stage actor and as an actor in movies and stuff. But as I've gotten older, and there are less parts for you. They just don't write as many parts for. Not that I'm that old, but you know what I'm saying. They use the same. You know, if you want a Steve Buscemi type, you just hire Steve Buscemi. You don't have to go through 12 guys to find Steve Buscemi or whatever. You know, voiceover has allowed me to continue to work as much as I've always worked as an actor and playing parts that I would never get to play on camera. You know, I mean, nobody's going to hire me to play Deadpool, on camera. But I originated the voice of Deadpool, so you know, it's like that. Those kind of things are pretty incredible. So, that's how I got the part, and that's how it launched. It evolved over time. The Crypt Keeper. What I came in an audition for was this fast, funny, stand-up kind of delivery, but the original puppet that Kevin was able to make on the budget that they gave him was not very. They didn't give him very much money. HBO was just starting out. They didn't give you a lot of money to start with, and the mouth moved about like this.
Hello,
You know, like this kind of thing. So we had to slow him down. If you watch the first couple of seasons or first number of episodes.
The Crypt Keeper talks slower and more ominously.
And that's only because the mouth couldn't move on the puppet.
No.
So, once the show got more popular, they gave him more money to spruce up the Crypt Keeper and put more servos in it and stuff like that. We could make him faster and funnier, and then, of course, I'd improvise here and there,
I love a girl who give you head and then let you keep it.
We're using that. So then we evolved him into in doing impersonations of Marlon Brando in Streetcar Named Desire, Stella, and his bony little arms and a ripped up T-shirt and stuff like that. But it evolved into something that was quite extraordinary, and we never ever thought that it was. They always thought it was a great property and a great thing for a general audience, and the fact that they were on HBO, it allowed them to do a lot of things they couldn't have done on network television. And but I don't think they ever thought. I was like, kids are watching this. They're gonna walk by the TV and they're gonna see a puppet going, "Hello, kitties." They're gonna stop. The kids are gonna stop. I don't think they ever would have let go of the rights. If they had known that it had become so popular with future generations.
Any hopes of a revival then?
Well, it's probably the question I get asked the most, and I mean, obviously, I don't have any call on that. That's about getting the rights again from EC Comics. William Gaines, when he was alive, loved the show. I got to meet him a couple of times, and he was amazingly into horror. His whole house was a library of horror material, scripts and comic books and all kinds of stuff. And his family has inherited it, and I'm sure that they think in terms of, how can we do the best we can for this show and make the most money and this kind of thing. But it's not just an annuity; it's a legacy of their family's comic books. And these guys did such a great job that it's hard for anybody else to possibly make it as good. So, in my opinion, it would be best if we got the rights back. Because the Crypt Keeper that we made was specifically our version of the Crypt Keeper. If somebody else made the show and they sold the rights to somebody else, they wouldn't have the rights to that Crypt Keeper.
Oh.
And then the Crypt Keeper that we have, we can't use as the Crypt Keeper because we don't have the rights to Tales from the Crypt anymore. They still own the episodes that they made and the movies that they made and everything else, but when I say they, I mean the producers that I did the show with. And the producers that I did the show with were Joel Silver, all the Matrix movies, what was all the ones he did with Dick Donner and Mel Gibson. Lethal Weapon movies, Richard Donner, of course, Goonies and Lethal Weapon and Superman, and Walter Hill, 48 Hours, Dreamscape, all these great movies. Bob Zemeckis was a producer on the show, and David Giler, who was the producer of Alien. So these were the producers on the show, so they could get any big actor they wanted. They could get any director they wanted to come in and do it for the budget that they had to produce the show. Everybody wanted to work with these guys. So we were able to make this extraordinary show with the budget that they gave us. So I think it's unrealistic to think that people would make a lot of money on making the show. The ancillary rights, all the merchandising and this kind of thing. I mean, if you see it, what do you see? You see the Crypt Keeper. That's where he is. That's the most marketed thing. It's probably the most ripped off, franchise out there. It's the emblem. People have. I'm sure there's a handful of you that have them tattooed on you right now, and at least some people have showed them to me. That's for sure. So it's really a matter of people putting aside, we didn't make that much money with you guys, so we want to go to somebody else, and lawyers and people liking each other and all this stuff. And this has gone on for years, and this is a typical thing, sadly, that goes on in our industry. You know it with other horror franchises that you've seen, where they give it to somebody who gives them the most money, and it's ruined because they don't want to pay for it and stuff like that. So it's disappointing in that way, but at the same time, we have 93 episodes that are amazing to watch, and the movies and everything else, and it'll always be a classic for that reason. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. I know that they're always working on trying to get the rights to it, and anything that I can do to try to help, I always do. But we'll see. But right now, nothing's been set in stone in order for it to be done. And they can sell the rights to somebody else. It just won't be our version of Tales from the Crypt that we love and know.
Yeah, it's too bad when it gets all legally and stuff.
I know. It's what it is. It's a money-making business. It is a business, and that's what people do. It's things get put to the side. Sometimes it's better left than not doing it all than doing a crappy version of it, or a version that's not as good. I'd rather see that, really.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it would be great if you guys got back and did it all right, but
exactly.
Nobody wants to see something that's not good.
Great new stars, great new directors. New technology. Although I love the fact, and I think this is one of the reasons we all love horror, and I'm sure you'll agree with me that one of the things we love about it is practical effects hold up.
Yeah. Yes.
Go watch Night of the Living Dead, and still when that little kid pulls out the trowel, and walking with pigs' entrails or something, you're like, oh, that's so cool. But CGI doesn't necessarily hold up 10 months later. It's better and better and better. And you're like, oh my God, I was watching. What's the one with Nicolas Cage where he's dead and he's riding the motorcycle?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was watching part of that last night. I came on the TV. I was like, oh my God, these effects suck. I was like, it was like everything looked pixelated. I was like, is there something wrong with the TV? And it was like, no, the effects were just, and they were really cool at the time, but they've just superseded it so extraordinarily. So, and Tales from the Crypt had the best special, effects guys, real effects guys that they could get. Todd Masters and Kevin making the Crypt Keeper, and Kevin directed most of the Crypt Keeper's sequences as well, and they were really just amazing. Do we want to open up the room?
I think that would be best. I think that everybody's got questions.
So what's your favorite episode?
My favorite episode. I have a handful of favorite episodes. The first season, there was some really good episodes, because, let's face it, they were directed by Richard Donner, Walter Hill, and Bob Zemeckis, the first 3 episodes. And I always loved The Man Who Was Deaf with William Sadler, the way he talks to the camera. They got Rod Cooder to do the music for it, and it was just so slick, so great, so classic comic book. And the Crypt Keeper's frying himself in the end in the electric chair, getting off on it. It's just great. Truly one of my favorites was Death of Some Salesman, with Tim Curry playing Winona and the mother and the father, and he was just so brilliant in it, and his performance was actually nominated for an Emmy for that. I happened to have my parents in town who know nothing about the industry. They're very old world, and happy Father's Day to everybody, by the way. They were out visiting me, and they wanted to see something shot, and I took him down the day they were shooting Tim Curry as Winona. I couldn't believe that it was a guy, first of all. And he had to hunch back, and they'd done such detail, he even had hammer toes and stuff. It was unbelievable. And he was just so eating it up, having a good time making it. I loved Ventriloquist Dummy. That's another Dick Donner one with Bobcat Goldthwait and Don Rickles, thank you, who I just thought was so good at that. And Morty, somebody brought me like a little remake of Morty that I have at home. Richard Donner used to have him in a little glass case in his office, which was always very unnerving. It was always kind of cool. And of course, Oil's Well That Ends Well, that starred Yours Goulding. I just love that they wrote that Crypt Keeper sequence where he's sitting there watching me on the TV going,
You know, the other hackers were good, but this one's a regular gory Cooper, a Robert Redford, and that voice, I could swear he reminds me of someone I know.
it's a good one. Thank you for that question. Yes?
I thought with Whoopi Goldberg.
Whoopi Goldberg was awesome. That was one of those Crypt Keeper sequences where, because there's other actors on the set, they would have me down to be off camera to play off of them as a Crypt Keeper, so they didn't have to like do everything with puppets and 5 puppeteers and the whole deal. And I got to not only work with Whoopi, but we were doing shows together on a soundstage. I was doing a show called FM, and she was doing a show based on Paris, Texas. Was that the name of that? It was a movie that she did with Gene, but a show that she did with Gene Stapleton. So we would have lunch every day, and she couldn't have been one of the nicest people in the business you will ever meet, ever. And in fact, she tried to champion me for a comedy special on HBO and stuff. But she's an amazing person to work with. Yes, Johnny.
I know you kind of answered it before, but there was talks about like rebooting the series and everything. I think it was a couple of years ago with
TNT.
Yeah, and M. Night Shyamalan. Did they ever come up to you and ask you for anything?
Well, I know that they did a bunch of what they call sizzle reels, which is, people are like, oh my God, they shot all this stuff. No, they just grabbed a bunch of footage from M. Shyamalan's movies and they threw my voice in there without paying me. There's a lot of stuff people get away with until somebody tells them to take it down. And trying to promote it. I think once they found out that they couldn't get this Crypt Keeper and this puppet and that kind of thing, that may have had something to do with it. I think it also, like the EC Comics people maybe had licensed it to other people too, and it got into a loss. Anyway, it always gets into that crowd.
Yeah,
but they were going to try to do a whole block of horror on TNT. With that as the flagship, Tales from the Crypt and a bunch of other stuff. And I think, once again, it was using the name and the history we know of the comic books with Tales from the Crypt as an idea for a show, but not honoring the comic book the way our show did, which was too bad. But that's, I guess we could be, it's too bad it didn't work out because it may have been something good, but then maybe we're lucky it didn't work out because it would have shot the chances of rebooting the show the way we would like to see it, or at least speaking for myself. Yes?
So, did you ever have a situation where the director of the story wanted to direct the intro and outro, since I don't think that was usually by that director? And I was also wondering...
it may have happened. I wasn't privy to it if it did, but there was often times where the director would come into the studio while Kevin and I were recording me, because we would record me first, and he'd videotape me the way I move and stuff like that, so the puppeteers could rehearse with it, and then, like a music video. Like a rock video, the way they lip sync to a rock video. It's basically the puppeteers were lip syncing to my performance, and they would just tell you what they did with because we didn't have footage yet or hadn't been cut together. They would come in to give us a tone, what it was, so that when I'm talking about what I just saw, or we're talking about what you're about to see, I would have some idea as an actor what to bring to it. But that's about it, really. Yeah.
I was also wondering, since you were a fan of the comic, was there any story that you wish would have been adapted but never was?
There was this great one that I kept telling him, you got to find this story. It was a guy that was caught in a glass coffin. And he turns out he's not dead, and he's buried, looking through the coffin and stuff like that. It was, I can't remember the whole story because it's so long ago. But I was like, look for that one. That was a really good one. That's why I can't remember the title of what it was.
Take that kite from on.
What's that?
Take that kite from on. Take that kite from on. No, no.
I'm sorry, but
I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Take that kite from on.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one, right? Dig That Cat, He's Real Gone. I love that one. That was with Joey Pants. That's a really good one. Yes.
I don't know if it's ever been done, but would you have liked to have done like a Scooby-Doo crossover with the Crypt Keeper?
Perfect, right? Although I always loved shows like Scooby-Doo, but I always hated the animation. It was like, same background, same background, same background, same background. You know, it was never like, you know, because I grew up on Merry Melodies and Looney Tune cartoons, and the animation was so good. You know, I was like, oh, I can't watch this. But at least the Tales from the Crypt animation, they did it in like really cool colors, and the stories were really different. But it would have been perfect. I mean, I'm sure that that's probably what they had in mind when they made the show. Let's try to do like a Scooby-Doo kind of cartoon with it. But that would have been perfect. But I never heard that they it's always you're always all of a sudden you got to go to Hanna-Barbera, and then then again it's like attorneys and licensing, and it's an ugly business. Yes.
So I can have a two-part question.
Okay.
Starting with theater.
Okay.
One, what's your favorite theater production? And two, if you could have any horror movie or any horror piece that existed be adapted for the stage, which one would be?
Oh, awesome. Good question. They did want to do a Broadway show with Tales from the Crypt, where it was like the Crypt Keeper introduced it, and you had 3 stories, and they made a whole thing from it. They did live action shows for Universal and that kind of thing. So Tales from the Crypt would definitely be an awesome one to do for, on a big stage. Obviously, they did Goosebumps, which is fun. Got kind of a mixed bag of reviews, but it looks very entertaining from what I saw on TV. I haven't seen it. My favorite stage production. Gosh, it's hard to say because I've seen so many over the years. The favorite stage production I was ever in, Three Guys, was pretty awesome. Hey, how are you? Ladies and gentlemen, the legend. See, first somebody walks out on me, and then somebody walks in on me. I much prefer the walking in. You can upstage me any day, darling.
Let's do one more question, and then.
Yeah, but as far as being in one, Reefer Madness, the movie musical, was about the most fun thing that I've ever done in my life. We did that in LA, and it was a big hit, and then we did it in New York, and sadly, September 11th happened 3 days before we opened, which I wish I wasn't in New York for that. That was, it's making me emotional just to even think about having been there through that. But then it was made into a movie, which we had a blast partying and shooting up in Vancouver, where they smoke a lot of weed themselves. The crew was never high, but the cast was never high, but the crew certainly was. I'm glad it all came out on film, though. But if you haven't seen that, light up a fatty and watch that one day. Really fun. I eat everybody in the end. There was one last question over here. Yes.
Oh, did you have a chance to get your own Crypt Keeper or take any prop from any?
I have a Tales from the Crypt pinball machine, which was part of my payment for doing the Crypt, all the voice on it, which is kind of cool. It has a little plaque that says this one made especially for John Kassir. I get so much stuff given to me. Some of my favorite stuff is fan art or art of the Crypt Keeper from artists who love the Crypt Keeper, and I have more of that than I have any memorabilia from the show. I had a full-size, one of those Spencer Gifts Crypt Keepers, full-size Crypt Keeper, but I would always take it to my friends for Halloween. They'd always want them in their front door with a bowl of candy in its lap, and they had gone back and forth. Kids would have to take the candy out of the Crypt Keeper's lap. That was fun to watch. And it just fell apart after a while from taking it around. I think I took the head around to a couple of conventions with me until I got tired of getting stopped at the security. Sure, can you open your bag? But these were given out. I have had people try to steal this from me many times. This is These were given out at the Bordello of Blood premiere instead of the one sheet, which usually has everything about the movie on it with who was in it and all that stuff. And so they gave these out, which were kind of fun. And I like to use them to photobomb people when we do our selfies.
That's awesome.
So anyway, it's really a pleasure to be here with you guys. I really appreciate it. I'm a like-minded horror fan and like-minded Tales from the Crypt fan, as well as somebody who got to be a big part of this incredible franchise. And thank you so much for coming and spending this time with me in this Q&A.
Thank you. Hey, everybody, go see him. You're still going to be here all day?
Those are the flights that were available, and I have to work tomorrow. I had my flight. I'm leaving here at 4, so I'll probably be at my table working until 3:30.
And there you go.
So there you go, man. There is John Kassir, the one and only, always entertaining. It was very cool. It was the second time that I have been doing the panels that he's been a guest, and it's never disappointing. Next week, episode 200 of the Horrific Podcast will be with the one and only Kane Hodder. Kane Hodder's panel, episode 200 of the Horrific Podcast. Hard to believe I put out 200 of these things. Pretty proud of that fact. Some podcasts come and go. Horrific Network, we've only grown. And like I mentioned at the top of the show, lots of haunt season going to be coming out all throughout the month. First one either tomorrow, the 2nd, or the 3rd. And they'll only be more frequent as we move on throughout October. I know the 10th, 11th, and 12th we're doing stuff. So yeah, it's just a matter of time and how long it takes to put these together. But we will definitely start to be seeing them. Anyway, thank you for listening. I hope that you guys enjoyed this one, and I hope that you tune into all the content we have coming to you this October. It's going to be a fun month and change, really. Haunt season will go into November as the Higby guys and myself are visiting haunts that first weekend of November. So we got time to put out all these episodes, and there will be a solid amount of episodes. Like I keep saying, I keep repeating myself, but I'm excited, man. It's Halloween season, October 1st. Let's go. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for all kinds of content coming to you this week and month. Stay spooky.